Good evening, everybody. How's it going today? Dr. Lim is out of town and she asked me to take over for tonight. Tonight, we're going to be talking about getting rid of family patterns that no longer fit. Please feel free to go ahead and post your questions in the chat. As always, the live is sponsored by Laurel Ridge Treatment Center. Laurel Ridge is a behavioral health program that offers compassionate care for every stage of life. It provides personalized treatment for all populations. Their interest is to help you into your journey to wellness. There are services for children, adolescents, adults, military dependents, active duty service members, veterans, first responders. They offer inpatient services, outpatient services, substance abuse treatment, residential treatment. You can call 210-491-3591 for a no cost assessment. Laurel Ridge is open 24 hours, 7 days a week, and their mission is to save lives, heal families, and create hope. Cheryl, how you doing tonight? I see 10 people on already. Go ahead and post your questions in the chat about how to get rid of family patterns that no longer fit. For those of you who are just popping in, I'm taking over for Dr. Lim tonight. She is out of town in Singapore and could not get to her computer tonight. So here we are. I'm going to go ahead and get rolling. Whenever you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. So first off, just want to talk about spotting patterns of family patterns that no longer fit your life. This can be something that's pretty hard to do. I think a lot of times we get really worked up and frustrated about things that our families do, people in our families, specific people, but it can be hard to recognize when the pattern is affecting our lives and when something that we're reflecting in our own lives. So, when it comes down to recognizing those things, what are some family patterns that you think that might be impacting your life that you hadn't considered before? What are some family patterns that you might not have considered before that might be harmful for your life? Apparently, everybody's got the perfect family out there, huh? Oh, good deal. All right. So, some family patterns that might be harmful could just be judging. We got feeling the need to take care of everyone. Oh, definitely. That can show up pretty big. Poor communication, absolutely. So, on feeling the need to take care of everyone, this is something that can show up and really take over your life. If you feel like you had a lot of expectations on you growing up and didn't really have an opportunity to, didn't have an opportunity to say no to your parents, you had to always fulfill their expectations. This can also transfer into other parts of your family life as well and really cause you to say no or yes to a lot of things that you want to say no to when it comes to your family, feeling obligations that aren't really serving your life in any way. um H Wolf, yeah, this is a great comment. Five years with Dr. Lemon, you've been able to build the courage to call your parents out for their unhealthy patterns. That's wonderful. What kind of unhealthy patterns have you been able to notice in your parents that you've been able to call out? As far as poor communication goes, yeah, man, that's a big one. I feel like a lot of people in general need to learn what effective communication looks like, and this can have a really big impact in family units. This Poor communication being things like not being able to fully express your needs, express your observations without feeling like you're going to hurt somebody's feelings, or worrying that you're going to get in trouble with your parents for saying the wrong thing, whatever it may be. And this breakdown in communication can cause a lot of dissonance between people in their families, and a lot of silence, and a lot of pent up frustrations and agitation that actually can transfer into much bigger issues. Um, H. Wolf, you were able to recognize your parents' constant need for people to perform, their unrealistic expectations. Absolutely. I know it can be pretty common for parents to want their kids to fulfill their own expectations. And the kid might not even want to do the things, be interested in the things that the parents are wanting them to do. So it's just a lifetime of the kid trying to meet expectations that they have no desire to meet, but feeling like they have to, not feeling like they have an option. And so um, this can even lead to things like identity crisis issues, where you don't really know who you are, what your life looks like outside of your parents' expectations. Um, so Question from Santo: how can an adult release family patterns when a child's character, personality, and traits shaped in early childhood are so deeply ingrained and mirrored by those very patterns and environments? That's a pretty big question. Honestly, just being willing to goes to a therapist and figure out what those patterns are. Right. That's a big part of it. Just acknowledgement is the first thing. And if you're able to get to the point where you can acknowledge and recognize what those patterns are, you can start taking steps to get through get through them. What's up, EK? Thanks, man. Yeah. So the more you're willing to recognize and acknowledge those patterns, the easier it is for you to get to that point to start breaking those patterns as well. When they're so deeply ingrained in your life, it can be so hard to let go, because that's what's familiar for you. So when you're getting to the point where you're starting to break those patterns, the unfamiliar things can feel very scary. And that scary feeling can turn into really not wanting to make the changes, because it's too uncomfortable. But the thing is, going back to what's comfortable is going back to what's familiar, and so that unfortunately isn't always the best for our lives going forward. Once you recognize what those negative patterns are, those harmful patterns are, um, that's when you're going to probably start living in a bit of a limbo and not really feeling comfortable in either space anymore. And so that's when you can start to evaluate what's going to be healthier for my life in the long run. How do you resolve your own trauma as a child while trying to build healthy behaviors as a parent? Man, I think one of the big ones that I've been learning about recently, personally, because I just became a parent recently to a 9-year-old boy. And so that's been something that I've been thinking about a lot, actually. How do you reflect the positive behaviors when you don't even really know what they are yet? But I think a big part of that is transparency. I think kids can really see through it when you're not being real with them. And so when you can step back and actually, express to your child in, whatever ways makes sense for their age and their personality, but express to them what you're going through, what you're dealing with, this can actually create connection between the two of you, between you and your children, and help them, and then you can go through it together as a family. And that growth can actually be pretty lasting, I would say, with kids who go through that growth with their parents. All right. So when treating a client who struggles when treating a client who struggles with boundaries in their day-to-day due to generational and cultural factors, what theories, interventions would you utilize throughout their treatment? That's a good question. Honestly, I'm just getting started in my therapeutic journey, so that's something that I am still learning exactly what theories and what interventions I would use. Um, I honestly am really, let's see, treating a client who struggles with setting boundaries in their day to day due to generational. Okay, so setting boundaries, that's something I would definitely use cognitive behavioral with. I think that's one that's really helpful. Just recognizing what helping to recognize activities that you can do to actually help change your patterns and shift your patterns. Um, that setting man boundary setting is something that if you're taught that there are no boundaries in your family, that can be something that's takes a long time to learn, and not only learn but to stick to, because you can learn how to set a healthy boundary, but how to keep a healthy boundary can be a big part of it, which is really difficult because you'll have parents who are and other family members who are very pushy and won't hold your boundaries. And so learning to keep those boundaries can be the hardest part, because a lot of times it can be really easy to give in when they're not keeping your boundaries. So really it's about sticking to it, and learning self-respect in a way where you keep your boundaries. And the more you start keeping your boundaries, the more those people will start, you're basically like retraining those people in your life, um, to understand that you're not going to bend on your boundaries and what you say. So I did not realize when I moved to Texas that I was being used. How do you realize it sooner rather than being distanced? I mean, um, if you're referring to being used by family, um, I think I would need a little bit more clarity on that, Carolyn. Were you being used in a sense of like getting someone getting you to move to Texas for their own benefit, or something else? If you can clarify on that, I can definitely answer that. Leah, I struggle with that. Keeping boundaries within family can be really hard. Yeah, keeping boundaries within family is pretty tough, especially when your parents raise you with certain values to always be loyal to family, to always listen to your parents, not really have a choice in the matter, not really have the opportunity to defy them and to be able to um, shape your own experience and your own boundaries. If you have parents that you couldn't say no to, then that can absolutely make it hard in adulthood to keep boundaries. Absolutely, Leah. So, can a spouse break unhealthy patterns in marriage if he's been raised with poor habits within his family? Um, if he's willing, or if they're willing, absolutely. Uh, that's one of those things where if you see it on your end and it's frustrating you and it's becoming difficult for you, uh, really the only way that the spouse will be able to break those patterns is if they recognize it and acknowledge it as well, and they're willing to move forward with change. Typically, if you're trying to force that change because you're the only one who sees it, and you're the only one who wants that change, it can be pretty difficult to get them to get on board with you, and it actually be legitimate. All right. Have I answered everybody's questions so far? This is my first time doing this, so we're just going to see how it goes here. Um, if you have any questions or thoughts, anything else that you want to add, please go ahead and put it in the comments, because I'm probably just as new as some of you out there. All right. So we talked about spotting the patterns. Next would be understanding the impact. Understanding the impact of these patterns within your families that you learn from your families. So, what are some of the ways that these patterns have impacted your lives so far? So, go ahead and tell me in the comments, what are some of the negative ways that family patterns have impacted your lives? I know for myself, I had a family that was pretty afraid of the world. That's one that I've had to really fight against, um, in learning that I should be afraid of most things instead of recognizing that um, life is generally safe. Right. And so I had to really work through that, and I had to experience the world in my own way to realize that there is safety in the world around me. And I don't have to be on the lookout for all the worst possible things to, um, I don't have to be on the lookout for all the worst possible things that might happen to me. So I think that had me personally on a path of just not being my best self and not doing as much with my life as I possibly could have. I was living in my safe space, right? And I was like, okay, well, this is what I've experienced, and this is where I want to stay with my life, with my career, with my family, all of these things. Um, so that's something that I have worked through by traveling, by meeting people that I wouldn't have probably met if I had stayed in my comfort zone. Um, so Carolyn, response on the earlier question. So your husband comes from a large family, working with full time. Uh, he was working full time, and you were called to help his parents. All right. So yeah. So you got asked to help his parents when you weren't feeling. I assume like it wasn't really you weren't feeling like it was your responsibility, saying yes maybe when you weren't really prepared to say yes to helping his parents. Um, I can definitely see that getting wrapped up into a very enmeshed family, especially if you're not used to being the one to or being involved in that way with family. That can be seem like a pretty innocent request, I imagine initially, and then getting once you get into the thick of it and realizing that you're being used in a way that's unhealthy for you, then yeah, that's you're kind of getting involved in a pattern that you're not familiar with, which is probably doesn't feel very good for you, I imagine. So yeah, so I guess it would be recognizing like that you are feeling like you're getting used, and a lot of that comes down to that communication aspect that somebody mentioned earlier. Communication is a big thing, and honesty and transparency, and it can be scary when when you're dealing with in-laws who maybe already operate in a certain way. Um, but but yeah, that's a really important thing, being transparent and honest in communication with people who are crossing your own boundaries and not hearing your own needs. So high school is enough education. What are you referring to there, Nate? 1236. Um, are these beliefs that your family instilled in you that you don't agree with? Dependent on my mom's sister, so I believe I learned how to spot unhealthy behaviors and stick to boundaries. That's great. That's great to be able to recognize that early or at any point in life to be able to recognize that you or how to spot unhealthy behaviors and how to stick to those boundaries. Not a lot of people have that opportunity. So, all right. So, yeah, understanding the impact that it had on your life, how it affects you. What are some other ways? Like I was talking about my family's habit of being afraid of the world. What are some other ways that your family patterns have impacted your lives? All right. So the next thing is building awareness. So building awareness about these patterns, recognizing triggers, and bring unconscious habits into the open. So when you start to recognize these habits, when you start to recognize these habits, and there are certain things that happen in life that trigger these habits and cause you to um, continue them, right? It's once you're able to recognize them, it's about bringing them into the light and being able to say, hey, this is happening and I want to change this, right? Which can be pretty hard to do. So recognizing it first to begin with is pretty difficult, but then moving forward into I want to acknowledge this and I want to change it, that can be pretty difficult. We also have, so Lindsay says, their insistence on following what they expect for us. Yeah. So that being the impact it had on your life, the insistence that they had on following what they expect for you. So it's hard to become your own person, live your own life when you're constantly trying to live up to the expectations of your parents. Carolyn says boundaries are with our words and actions. Effective communication is very helpful with changing the way you use your words and they hear you. Example, let's agree we disagree and walk away. Yeah, and so a lot of that too comes down to being able to express yourself effectively. Um, and I am really big on when it comes to setting boundaries, clarity, kindness, and I'm forgetting the third one. But yeah, so clarity and kindness are two big things in and honesty. That's what it is: clarity, kindness, and honesty when it comes to setting boundaries. Because if you're not clear with your words, it's hard to say that you did your best to set the boundary, right? Um, so knowing that you expressed yourself in a very clear and transparent way, an honest way, this is the really about foundation for a healthy boundary. So yeah, and if you do get to a point where it's just not working, it's not happening, saying yeah, let's agree to disagree, then that can be the way to go sometimes for sure. So sometimes when I can't get people to understand what I'm trying to say, or they're just not willing to listen, my favorite thing to say is okay and walk away. That's it. All right. Thanks, Caroline. I appreciate that. How do you address family members when you accept who you really are after conforming your life around them? Um, Man, that can be pretty tough, and it depends on the family member, I would say. So some family members you want to maybe be a little bit more sensitive around if they're someone that you really want to continue to cultivate a relationship with. If it's somebody that you're already kind of indifferent to, and they're crossing boundaries, um, or not really understanding where you're coming from now that you've started to have a deeper understanding of who you are, um, then it's really all about, again, choosing your words, right? Choosing your words wisely and understanding what you're trying to convey to them. So some people you can be a bit more brief with, but family members that you want to have more closeness with and you want to develop a relationship with them, even as you go into this new space of accepting who you are instead of trying to be somebody you're not based off of what family's expectations have been in the past. Then I would definitely say, have that open, honest conversation with them. And I would hope that someone you want to be close with is going to be willing to hear you. Um, Granted, I would say if you do approach that person and they don't like who you are and they're not willing to hear you, maybe it's worth reconsidering whether they're going to be someone you want to be close to. All right. So, yeah, we've already covered setting boundaries, practicing self compassion. This actually, EK, your question is a great transition into practicing self compassion. Um, so there can be a lot of guilt and shame around accepting who you are, around working to discover who you really are, what your identity actually is outside of your family's expectations and the family patterns that have been instilled in you. When you're able to step outside of that bubble and see who you are on a different level, it can be pretty scary. It can be pretty there can be a lot, like I said, a lot of shame and guilt because, like, for instance, I grew up with a very religious perspective on life. As I got older, I recognized that religion wasn't necessarily the religion that I was raised with wasn't necessarily right for me. And I struggled for several years trying to understand what it looked like for my life, how other people were going to view me because I did not align anymore with the things I was raised with the people that I spent most of my life around. I didn't know, how many people I was going to lose for my life. And so allowing myself to love myself, regardless of who chose to love me or not, made a huge difference for me. So going alongside that is then choosing healthier relationships. All right. Um, this is something that can take time to do, but recognizing the people that are harming your life instead of helping your life can be pretty painful. There can be a lot of grief involved in letting people go who are essentially trying to get you to continue in those those negative habits, those harmful habits. But and the more you stick to your boundaries, the more those people will kind of start to weed themselves out of your life and make space for healthier relationships that are actually more supportive of your growth. All right, we got about 5 more minutes. So if we have any questions, go ahead and put them in. I'd like to get to at least one or two more before we go. All right. So from choosing healthier relationships, you're going to want to then define your own values. So when you've been raised with your family's values and those have been instilled in you, um, discovering your own values can be quite a feat, and it can take some time to figure out what you really stand on, what's important to you. Got a question. If I have to let someone go, it means my kids have to let them go too. How do I handle that? Um, so is your kids' health and wellness, happiness, um, more important to you than that relationship? That's what I would want to ask. So by that I mean, if you're choosing to let somebody go because they're harmful for your life, is it healthy for your kids to have them in your life, in their lives? So explaining to them, it might take some time. They might get mad at you, depending on your kids' ages, their relationship with the person. If you're having to let go of a relationship with, say, your mother, for instance, or your father, um, telling your kids why we're not talking to grandma and grandpa anymore could be kind of difficult. Chances are the kids are at least sensing your negative relationship with those people, and while there may be, again, some grief involved, it there should be less stress in the environment in general, in the long run, and so hopefully some understanding there as well. If they are old enough to know the difference and they are old enough to know what's happening in that scenario, then maybe it's also worth letting them make the decision whether they still are in contact with that person or not. That's just my initial thoughts on it. So, from defining your own values, last thing is you're going to focus on growth. So, you don't just want to stop and be like, "Oh, I figured it out. I figured out my values. I know what they are now. And that's it. That's all I need to do." Nope. You got to keep going forward, and you got to keep learning to understand what those values mean to you, what part they play in your life. And even sometimes coming to terms with the fact that some of the values that you learned from your family were actually okay. It can be really easy to overcorrect and just completely let go of everything you ever learned from your family because you feel hurt by them, or you feel, betrayed, or like you weren't allowed to be yourself. But even if you do overcorrect and let go of too many things, having the willingness to say, okay, well, actually, this is important for me, so I'm going to bring this back into my life, things along those lines, right? um, so continue to grow, continue to figure out what your life looks like outside of these old harmful patterns. All right. We have any more questions before we sign off for the night? Here we go. How do you navigate a relationship that you have conformed to for so many years to save it, knowing that being genuine to yourself will cause you to leave it? Um, Man, rip the band-aid off. So yeah, it's I think a big part of that is going to be like just the grieving process. It's one of those things you kind of just um, take the leap and go ahead and grieve it while you're going through it, but just trust yourself, trust your gut, and know that you're doing the right thing, even though it might be difficult. Um, Nate, yes, class in person tomorrow and Saturday. We'll see you guys. We'll see you guys at what is it, 6:30 tomorrow night, or 6 tomorrow night, and then 8:30 on Saturday. For group sessions, if you guys are in group sessions in the class, you can pay those on any platform, honestly, Zelle, Venmo, or Cash App. Um, and we can take care of that in class on Saturday if we haven't done it yet. All right. I appreciate everybody for hanging out with me and bearing with me as I get used to this whole talking to myself for half an hour thing. Have a wonderful night, everybody, and we'll see you on, or I will see you on Saturday if you're in class. Have a good night.